Alright, let me take you back to where it all began. It was at this party, you know, the kind where you're not really excited to go but end up having the time of your life. That's where I met Alex. Our friends, who were hosting, had been trying to set us up for ages. They said we'd hit it off, and damn, were they right. So there I was, standing with a drink in my hand, feeling kind of out of place in a crowd of strangers, when Alex walked over. He had this easy smile and a way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. "Hey, I'm Alex. You must be the famous Sarah I've heard so much about," he said, extending his hand with a cheeky grin. I remember laughing, the ice in my drink clinking as I shook his hand. "Famous? I think you've been fed some tall tales." "Nah," he chuckled, "just that you're supposed to be the life of the party." "Well, let's not let the rumors down," I replied, and from that moment, we just clicked. We talked about everything and nothing, from our favorite movies to the most embarrassing things we'd ever done. It felt like talking to an old friend, someone I could be myself with without any pretense. As the night went on, we found ourselves away from the crowd, sitting on the back porch, sharing stories under the stars. It was one of those conversations that felt like it could go on forever. "You know, my friends thought this would be a good setup, but I think they underestimated how much we'd actually get along," Alex said, looking genuinely surprised. I smirked, taking a sip of my drink. "Yeah, I was ready to bail the minute I got here. Glad I didn't." "That makes two of us," he replied, his eyes locking with mine in a way that made my heart skip a beat. Just then, some drunk guy stumbled out onto the porch, breaking the moment. "Hey, you two gonna make out or what?" he slurred, causing both of us to burst out laughing. "Get lost, man," Alex said, not missing a beat, but the guy just wandered off, leaving us in stitches. The night ended with Alex asking for my number. "So, Sarah, can I text you sometime? Maybe continue this conversation without the drunk party crashers?" I grinned, feeling that flutter in my stomach again. "I'd like that," I said, and gave him my number. Walking home that night, I couldn't stop smiling. I had a feeling that this was the start of something special. Little did I know how right I was, and just how much of a roller coaster was waiting for us down the line. The day Alex and I decided to meet his parents, my stomach was in knots. I knew they were well off, living in a world that seemed miles away from my simple upbringing. Alex tried to ease my worries on the drive over, his hand finding mine as he glanced my way. "They're gonna love you, Sarah. Just be yourself," he reassured, squeezing my hand. "Yeah, if being myself doesn't include being a nervous wreck," I muttered, trying to smile. We pulled up to a house that looked more like something out of a magazine than a place where people actually lived. It was massive, the kind of place with more rooms than you'd know what to do with. As we walked up to the front door, Alex gave me an encouraging nod, and we stepped into the lion's den. His mom, let's call her Elaine, greeted us with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. His dad, whom we'll call Richard, was more straightforward, offering a firm handshake that felt more like a test of strength than a greeting. "So, you're the girl Alex has been spending all his time with," Elaine said, leading us into the living room. Her tone was polite, but there was an edge to it that made me brace myself. "Yes, Mrs. Jackson. It's so nice to finally meet you," I said, my voice a bit too high-pitched even to my own ears. "Dinner's ready." "Let's eat," Richard announced, cutting through the awkward pleasantries. Dinner was an exercise in dodging subtly sharp questions and trying to make small talk that felt like pulling teeth. Elaine was particularly skilled at backhanded compliments. "It's so brave of you to pursue a career in web design, especially coming from such a humble background," she said, her eyes scanning me like I was an interesting specimen under a microscope. "Yeah, well, we can't all inherit a business, can we? Gotta work with what we've got," I shot back, a little more defensively than I intended. Alex shot me a look, a mix of admiration and "please let's not start a war at the dinner table." Richard, for the most part, stayed out of the fray, focusing on his food more than the conversation. But when he did chime in, it was with pointed questions about my intentions with Alex. "So, Sarah, where do you see yourself in 5 years?" Still trying to make it in web design, or have you considered something more stable? I took a deep breath, trying not to let my irritation show. Well, Richard, I'm pretty committed to my goals. Stability is great, but so is following your passion, right? The dinner dragged on, with every course feeling like another round in an invisible boxing match. By the time dessert was served, I was mentally exhausted, running on autopilot. On the drive back, Alex was quiet, a storm brewing in his eyes. I'm sorry about that. They can be a bit intense. I laughed, the tension from dinner finally starting to ebb away. Intense? That's one way to put it. But don't worry, I can handle a little heat. Alex grinned, reaching for my hand again. That's my girl. You know, you really impressed me tonight. Standing your ground like that. Yeah, well, someone's gotta keep your parents on their toes, I joked, feeling the night's stress melt away in the warmth of his smile. Life with Alex was everything I could have hoped for and more. We married surrounded by those who genuinely cared for us, ready to start our new life together. Almost immediately after, we were blessed with the arrival of our son, a bundle of joy who became the center of our world. Yet, despite the happiness our little one brought into our lives, a shadow loomed over our newfound bliss. Alex's parents refused to accept our son as part of the family. They harbored doubts, unfounded and cruel, about the paternity of our child, suggesting he wasn't truly Alex's. One evening, after we'd put our little guy to bed, Alex and I were slumped on the couch, each nursing a cup of tea, when he dropped the bombshell. Sarah, my mom called today. He began, the words heavy. She's insisting on a paternity test. I choked on my tea, coughing as the words sunk in. She what? My voice was a mix of disbelief and anger. Yeah, I know, it's insane. She's out of line, Alex said, running a hand through his hair, looking as frustrated as I felt. Why now? What's her problem with us being happy? I was fuming, the idea of it all so offensive, so invasive. Alex sighed. She's convinced herself that. I don't know, that our son isn't mine. Says it's for the family's peace of mind. Peace of mind? What a load of crap. I snapped, my temper flaring. And what did you say to that? I told her she was being ridiculous, that it's an insult to even suggest it. But she's adamant. She's even willing to pay for the test, Alex explained, his tone defeated. I stood up, pacing the room, my mind racing. And if we say no? Then she threatens to cut ties, disown me, or worse, drag us through some legal battle. She's bluffing, I think. But Sarah, I don't want this hanging over our heads. I stopped pacing, looking at him, the anger simmering down to a painful realization. So, we just do it? Prove her wrong and shove it in her face? Alex nodded. Yeah. We do it, not for them, but for us. To end this nonsense. The day of the test, we were a quiet storm of nerves and silent defiance. The clinic was sterile and impersonal, the process clinical and cold. We gave our samples, our little guy oblivious to the tension, babbling happily in my arms. On the ride home, Alex tried to lighten the mood. Imagine the look on her face when the results come in. Congratulations, it's a grandson. I couldn't help but snort, despite the situation. She'll probably accuse the lab of being in on a conspiracy. We laughed, a brief respite from the weight of it all. The wait for the results was agonizing, each day stretching on. When the envelope finally arrived, we sat together, hand in hand, as Alex tore it open. Reading the results, a mix of relief and vindication washed over us. 99.99% Alex was indeed the father. I grabbed the phone, dialing his mother's number, before I could second-guess myself. Mrs. Jackson, you might want to sit down for this. The test results? Alex is the father. Shocking, right? My voice dripped with sarcasm. There was a pause on the line, a moment of silence that spoke volumes. Well, I suppose that settles that, then, she said, her voice cold, devoid of apology. Yeah, it does. And let me make something clear, I continued, my voice steady and firm. This is the last time you question my family. The next time you want to play detective, maybe start with a mirror. It's been 10 years. Life had settled into a comfortable rhythm for us, despite the lingering shadows of past conflicts. Then, out of the blue, on a lazy Sunday afternoon, my phone rang. The caller ID flashed a name that made my heart sink and my stomach twist into knots, Elaine, Alex's mom. I glanced at Alex, who was sprawled on the couch with our son, both engrossed in some cartoon that involved more explosions than dialogue. He caught my look and mouthed, "Who is it?" When I showed him the phone, his eyebrows shot up in surprise. Taking a deep breath, I answered, bracing myself. "Hello? Sarah, it's Elaine. I know we haven't spoken in a while, but I wanted to wish my grandson a happy 10th birthday," she said, her voice softer than I remembered. I was taken aback, not only by the call itself, but by the gentleness in her tone. Thank you. That's unexpected." There was a pause, and then she continued, "I've been doing a lot of thinking, Sarah. About everything. I know I've made mistakes, and I want to try to make things right. Could we possibly meet and talk?" I was speechless, a rare occurrence for me. I glanced at Alex again, his face a mixture of curiosity and caution. "I'll need to discuss it with Alex. Can I get back to you?" "Of course, dear. Please do. And tell Alex I said hello." As I ended the call, Alex was immediately by my side, our son looking up at us, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. Was that really my mom? What did she want? Alex asked, his voice tight with concern. "She wants to talk, says she wants to make amends. Even wished our boy a happy birthday," I said, still trying to wrap my head around the conversation. Alex rubbed his neck, a sign of his unease. "Wow, I didn't see that coming. What do you think? Are we ready to open that door again?" I sighed, watching our son return his attention to the TV, blissfully unaware of the adult complexities swirling around him. "I don't know, Alex. Part of me wants to believe people can change. But another part. I'm scared of getting hurt again, of us getting hurt." Alex took my hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you. We've been through worse, haven't we? If she's genuinely trying to make amends, maybe it's worth hearing her out. For his sake," he said, nodding towards our son. When Elaine, my mother-in-law, showed up at our doorstep the following week, she wasn't empty-handed. She brought with her a high-end gaming console for my son, Jamie. The boy's eyes nearly popped out of his head when he saw it. "Whoa, is this for me?" he gasped, his excitement palpable. "Yes, sweetheart, it's for you," Elaine said, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. I watched the exchange, my stomach knotted with suspicion. What was she playing at? Later, as we sat in our living room, Elaine dropped the bombshell about her husband, Richard. "He's very ill," she said, her usual tough exterior cracking a bit. "Stomach cancer. Doctors say he doesn't have long." The news hit hard, even with the strained relationship we had with them. "I'm sorry to hear that, Mom," Alex managed, the shock clear in his voice. "That's why I want you all to come over next weekend. He wants to see you, especially Jamie," she added, her gaze lingering on our son. Despite my wariness, we agreed. It seemed the right thing to do, given the circumstances. The visit to their mansion was as uncomfortable as I anticipated. Richard looked a shadow of his former self, his illness taking a visible toll. Jamie, oblivious to the tension, was thrilled with the grandeur of the place. "Wow, this place is huge," he exclaimed, his young eyes wide with wonder. As the evening wore on, Elaine took Alex and me aside for a private talk. What she said next floored me. "We need an heir for the business, and we want Jamie to be that heir," she stated, her tone matter of fact. I blinked, taken aback. "What about your other grandson, Matthew? Isn't he the heir?" Elaine's lips thinned. "Matthew had an accident. a spinal fracture. He can't take over the business now. Her indifference to Matthew's plight chilled me. It was all about the business for her. So, you're just discarding him because he's injured? And now you want Jamie as your backup plan? I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my voice. It's not like that, Sarah. It's about securing our family's future. And Jamie is part of this family, Elaine countered, but her words felt hollow. Alex and I exchanged a look, a silent agreement passing between us. We'll need to think about this, Mom, he said, his voice steady. Jamie's future isn't something we're going to rush into. Elaine nodded, though I could tell she wasn't pleased. Just remember, we're willing to cover all his education expenses. It's an opportunity of a lifetime. The ride back home was quiet, each of us lost in thought. This wasn't just about a business or an inheritance. It was about our son's life, his happiness. And no amount of money could make us compromise on that. After Elaine's bombshell about wanting Jamie to be the heir, Alex and I had a long talk. It was late, the kind of hour that blurs lines and softens shadows, making hard truths a bit easier to speak. Can you believe this, Alex? She basically wants to trade in Matthew for Jamie because he's hurt. It's like, I don't know, picking players for some sick game, I said, frustration bubbling up. Alex rubbed his face, looking as tired as I felt. Yeah, it's messed up. Mom's always been about the business, but this? It's cold, even for her. And what she said about Matthew. It's like he doesn't matter to her anymore. How can she be so heartless? My voice cracked a bit. This wasn't just about offers and inheritance, it was about family, about doing what's right. We're not doing it, Sarah. We're not letting Jamie get sucked into her twisted world. He's a kid, not a chess piece, Alex said, his voice firm. Exactly. He should be playing with toys, not getting groomed to take over a business he knows nothing about, I added, feeling a surge of protective anger. The next day, I called Elaine, my stomach in knots, but my resolve firm. Elaine, we need to talk about your offer, I started, trying to keep my voice steady. Oh? Have you come to your senses, then? Her voice was smug, expecting compliance. No, we haven't come to our senses. We're not letting Jamie be part of this scheme of yours. He's a child, Elaine. And what you're doing to Matthew is unforgivable, I shot back, my anger rising. She scoffed. You're being short-sighted, Sarah. You don't understand what it means to be part of a legacy. To have power. You're just an uneducated girl playing house. That stung, but I plowed on. Maybe I don't understand your world, Elaine, but I do know that what you're offering isn't right for Jamie. We want no part of it. Her tone turned icy. You'll regret this, Sarah. I'll make sure of it. The threat hung in the air, heavy and ominous. After we hung up, I felt a mix of fear and defiance. I didn't have to wait long to see what Elaine's revenge would look like. The very next morning, a knock at the door revealed 2 social workers, their badges and serious expressions a prelude to trouble. Mrs. and Mr. Jackson, we've received a complaint alleging that you're mistreating your son. We need to talk to you and conduct a preliminary assessment, one of them explained, her voice neutral, but not unkind. Alex and I exchanged a look of disbelief. Mistreating Jamie? That's ridiculous. Who would even say something like that? Alex sputtered, his confusion mirrored in my own heart. The social workers remained professional. We're not at liberty to disclose the source of the complaint, but please understand, we have to investigate all claims. They asked to see Jamie, to talk to him, and to inspect our home. It was humiliating, invasive, but we complied, knowing we had nothing to hide. Jamie, bless his heart, was confused, but told them how much he loved us, how we played together, and about the new game console Grandma gave him. After their visit, they seemed satisfied that the complaint was baseless but informed us that they would open a case for a standard 60-day review. Once they left, Alex exploded. My mom has gone too far this time. This is war. I nodded, feeling a mix of dread and determination. Elaine's move was low, even for her. But Alex and I were united, ready to protect Jamie from her manipulations, no matter what it took. A week passed, with an uneasy quiet. Then, as if challenging the peace, the social workers returned, this time with a new claim from Elaine, my mother-in-law. They relayed that there had been a report Jamie was left home alone, a situation we knew never occurred. The accusation was ludicrous, but the implication was severe, and it set a chill down my spine. After the social workers left, Alex, with a storm brewing in his eyes, called his mother. I could only hear one side of the conversation, but the tension in the room was palpable. "Mom, this has to stop. You're not just crossing lines, you're obliterating them. Why would you say Jamie was left alone?" His voice was a mix of anger and disbelief. The response was a cold laugh that echoed through the speakerphone, sending a shiver down my spine. "Oh, Alex, you really don't know me at all if you think I'll just stand by. Everything will go as I have planned." The following week, our nightmare scenario unfolded. Jamie didn't come home from school. Frantic, we called around, only to discover Elaine had picked him up, claiming she had our permission. My heart stopped. When we finally got Jamie on the phone, his words twisted the knife deeper. "Grandma says I can stay with her. She buys me stuff and lets me do what I want," he said. The realization that Elaine would go to such lengths to manipulate our son, to tear him from us, was a wake-up call. We had tried to handle things calmly, to keep the peace for the sake of family unity, but it was clear that Elaine's motivations were driven by control and spite, not love or concern for Jamie's well-being. With heavy hearts, but a determined resolve, we involved the police, explaining the situation and insisting on our son's return. The legal system, slow but eventually effective, sided with us, recognizing the manipulation and unlawfulness of Elaine's actions. The trial felt like a storm that had raged around us, threatening to pull us under. But when it finally passed, the skies cleared in a way we hadn't expected. Richard's death came as a shock, a somber reminder of how fleeting and fragile life could be. Yet, in his passing, he left behind a message, a final act that would redefine the future of our family. It turned out Richard had made some unexpected decisions regarding his estate. Most of it was left to Alex and me, a gesture that spoke volumes of his silent observations and perhaps his regrets. He also made sure to provide for his eldest grandson's rehabilitation, a sign of love for his grandchild despite everything. Elaine was left with just a small monthly allowance, a decision that, no doubt, came as a shock to her. One evening, Alex and I sat down with Jamie, the glow from his nightlight casting soft shadows across his room. It was time to talk about the future, about the choices and the legacy his grandparents had left behind. "Jamie, you know how Grandpa Richard left us some money, right?" Alex started, his voice gentle, but serious. "Yeah, Dad. Does that mean I can get more video games?" Jamie's innocent question brought a smile to my face, a brief moment of lightness in the gravity of our conversation. "It means a lot more than that, Bud," I chimed in, ruffling his hair. "It means you have options for your future. For school, for what you want to be when you grow up." Jamie looked between us, his young mind trying to grasp the weight of our words. "But I don't know what I want to be yet." "Is that okay?" "Absolutely," Alex assured him. "The most important thing is that you get to choose, to find what makes you happy. And we'll be here to support you, no matter what." "And what about Grandma Elaine?" Jamie's question hung in the air, a reminder of the wounds still healing. "We'll deal with that as it comes. But for now, let's focus on us, on our family," I said, hoping to ease his concerns. The days that followed were filled with discussions about trusts, scholarships, and savings for Jamie's education. We wanted to ensure that whatever he decided to pursue, the resources would be there to support him. It wasn't just about securing his future financially, it was about giving him the freedom to dream, to explore, and to become whoever he wanted to be. As for Elaine, the relationship remained strained, a bridge partially burned by past actions. Yet, we held out hope that time might bring healing, might soften the sharp edges of conflict and misunderstanding. For Jamie's sake, we remained open to reconciliation, to finding a way forward that could include her, albeit with boundaries firmly in place.